So on this channel, I cover a lot of games, AA, AAA, dare I say quadruple A games occasionally. But one of the things I've wanted to do is to try and find a way to highlight smaller games or indie games that otherwise wouldn't get the chance to stand out in a sea of quadruple A, AAA games that flood the market with hundreds of millions of dollars in marketing. I want to give those games a chance to get exposed to you guys, so you find out about something you might not have heard of before, and it can also help promote some of these smaller projects and newer studios into a position where they can maybe, hopefully, compete with some of the bigger guys. And that's what we're going to be doing today by looking at an up-and-coming RPG in early access from a Ukrainian studio called New Arcane. The developers Dreamate and their publisher Fulcrum Publishing reached out to me and asked if I would be interested in checking out this game in early access. I looked at some of the trailers on their Steam page and was immediately enthralled because I love steampunk stuff, and this game melds magic and steampunk futuristic technology stuff really, really interestingly. So I was like, yeah, let's check it out. And so they are sponsoring this video and connecting me with early access to the game so I can share it with you directly. And I have the game and I've been playing it and I'm gonna share it with you today. Now, to be clear, this is not a review. This is not like some grand critique or anything. After all, the game is in early access. Right now, if you check out the game on Steam, you can get early access and support the devs early for 20 bucks. You get access to the game as it is, and you can provide feedback to the devs in real time as they finish the game in anticipation of a release later next year. The point is, I don't think it would be really fair to critique a game like this in early access before it's done. So instead, in this video, I hope to just give you an idea of what this game is all about so you can check it out if you are interested and potentially support this small up-and-coming studio. First things first is that this game is directly inspired by some old school RPGs. Specifically, they pointed to Arcanum of Steamworks and Magic Obscura, which is an old school classic CRPG from back in the day. So if you are interested in those older school CRPGs, you're going to feel right at home here. Now, combat is turn-based. It also is built around your party and their synergistic abilities. But as you can see here, there are 3 enemies I'm fighting at one time. I happen to have an ability called Trick Shot, which fires ricocheting bullets that deal damage to multiple targets. So I can select that since it's not on cooldown currently. I'll aim for the target that I'm guaranteed to hit, and then the ricochets will hopefully bounce off onto the other enemies from there. And as you can see, it works great. And now I have a cooldown for that ability until it's ready to go again. However, all of your abilities are actually tied to primary points, and I have 2 of those, which means I can either use it to sprint to gain extra movement points to move farther, or I can do a dual pistol shot or just reload the pistol, which I have equipped. In this case, I'm going to do a dual pistol and I'm going to shoot for this guy. Bada bing, bada boom, a little bit of damage. It's now my other party member's turn. He is a melee focused character, so I can sprint up here as fast as I can, but I'm just ever so slightly out of range to hit him with my melee weapons. So I'm gonna use one of my primary points to sprint, and I'm gonna move a little bit closer to all of them. And I'm gonna then do my big attack. Now I have a concussive blow or a hammer attack. The concussive blow is going to specifically launch the enemy into the air and stun them, and it can hit multiple targets. So I'm gonna try to thread the needle with this, aim for both, and bada bing, bada boom. They are stunned now. Then I pass the turn. You can see they get to go through their turns. The status effects that they have will apply. So as you can see, they didn't get to take an action since they were stunned, and that takes their action. I'm going to move and pivot off a little ways since I am a ranged based build at the moment, and I'm going to take another couple shots at him, and I've got 2 primary action points, so I'm going to use both of them. I'm then going to pass the turn to my big friend here, who can hopefully finish this dude. Maybe one more hit. Can we do it? Can we do it? Oh yeah, there we go. Now you can see it also pops up with an opportunity attack because this guy is crossing in front of me. So because I still had a reaction point enabled for this guy, I can choose to react with that, or I don't have to react at all if I didn't want to. In this case, I will. He deals 18 damage. This guy changes his mind, tries to slap me, whatever. I don't care. I should maybe be able to finish him off. At least close. No, not that close. But this guy's stunned, so he's not going to get his actions after I pass to him. And so sure enough, it's gonna run right past him. They're gonna do a couple more hits. He's trying to move out of my range, but I can still take my opportunity attack on him. And I'm gonna be able to finish him here in just 1 second. But first I have to reload with one of my actions, fire, and then he's dead, and I'm left with just one guy to worry about. Then I got this guy. He's just gonna hammer slam, booyah, and I'm gonna do it one more time, and this should finish him. And just like that, we finish the encounter. We can loot the bodies if we need to, and collect all of the goodies. I'm gonna take literally all of it. Once I've collected all that stuff, if I open my inventory, you can see I've got a lot here. Diesel Dart Model 3. I've got different pants, which potentially could be better. In this case, plus 10 armor, plus 5 dodge. That I think is gonna be pretty good. We could swap that out. And this is where you can start to really build in your character and fine tune it. You can also pass these items to your party members. So if you think, ooh, this hammer might be good for my buddy Mick. So I'm gonna give it to him. And now when I go over to his profile, it will be located in his inventory. And to be clear, this is all very, very basic combat because we are in the opening couple of hours of the game. They are only going to be cranking it up in complexity from here with enemies that are far more complicated, which I'm sure I don't have to tell you because this is an RPG. And if you're watching this video, you probably understand what that entails. But I think it is just important to clarify that, like, there is a lot here and there's a lot of complexity, especially once you start digging into like perks and the different abilities and traits that each of your party members will get to acquire and focus on, which can improve all sorts of different stuff. So to be clear, there is a long runway on this game when it comes to combat complexity. And that's one thing I'm really excited to see the final version of the game bring forward, because already I can see a lot of potential here. And I'm sure as they start to build out the rest of it, it's only going to get more and more complex and deep, which I love. I mean, just look at the environments. Look how many different NPCs there are to talk to. Everybody has their own little bitty story, whether they're playing music for some easy money or they're waiting for their beloved to arrive on the train or something. Everybody here has a story, whether it is explored in detail or not. And I just love that attention to detail. The other thing I want to show you as well is that there are crafting systems in this game too. So as you can see up here on the right, I've got the tech craft tree. And if I open that up, you can see Mick pulls out this big box. He's going to drop it to the floor, open it up, and then we actually can craft individual things that we might need based on items that we have found while out exploring. So even though loot can be quite numerous, once you start really getting a lot of it put together, you can craft individual things like frag grenades, flame grenades, more ammunition, or eventually armor pieces, weapons and weapon attachments, stuff like that, that can enhance your experience even further, which, you know, I love crafting systems. I think this is also really cool. And just like that, we close it back up. Mick picks it up and puts it back in his inventory, and you are good to keep exploring. Bada bing, bada boom. When you go through the character creator, as of right now in early access, you can choose between human and elf, and you build out your character based on how you want to roleplay. One of the other things you'll notice pretty much immediately is that this is based on a D100 system. All that really means is that if you think of D&D, that is a D20 system. So you roll an actual D20 dice, and then based on how it lands, that tells you whether you succeeded or not. But with a D100 system, you have all of your skills outlined here, as you can see, but you apply points. Let's say I add 5 more to persuasion. As you can see in the save file, I've got 5 to apply for each of my characters. If I do that, and then I have a, let's say, persuasion check, I have a 45% chance of succeeding that, because when I roll the D100, if I roll under 45, I succeed. If I roll over it, I fail. So as long as I'm within the range that I have, I succeed. And if I'm really, really good at something, and let's say I had a survival of 95, that would mean I have a 95% chance of passing that check, just because if I roll from 0 to 95, I pass. So it's actually technically like easier to quickly understand what your character is capable of compared to like a D20 system. At least in my brain, that's how it works. So it's an old school style of CRPG, and it's one that they implement here. Now, it's not as straightforward as that. Of course, there's more complexity here. In fact, the value that you will need to roll to pass a given skill check will also depend on the specific task and even the situation itself. For example, if you are afflicted with some sort of status debuff or something that affects your physical abilities, that could also make completing this skill check related to strength much more difficult. Beyond that, of course, they have gear, they have all sorts of stuff. Forgive me for not having it organized, and you'll notice that I have a few different things that are used for voodoo magic. This is because the whole duality in New Arcane is based on technology versus magic, and it's kind of a cool narrative thing to explore in an RPG like this, where you have the steampunk technology all over the map, but then you also have people using magic. And as you go through the game and make certain decisions, and there's different consequences that apply, certain districts will become more in tune with like magic use or technological usage and things. And so that can also affect your player's ability to interact with people or to fight certain people in those areas. It all ties together. And honestly, like I said, I'm a steampunk fanatic. I just love the style, the art style of it. I love Victorian England. I love the steampunk vibe mixed with that. I don't know why. It just tickles my brain in a way that I find really satisfying. So I love the art style and presentation of this. Part of the reason I wanted to do this video is because I was like, can we please have more steampunk games that are successful? Like, come on, please. But the other thing I've noticed as I've gone through the opening sequences of this game is that the world building in general strikes a pretty solid tone in terms of like BioShock Infinite, kind of mixed with Lies of P and some other little tidbits here and there. And I actually really dig it. It's amazingly enough, a pretty interesting world that they've put together here. And I'm just starting to get a little taste of it. I mean, of course, this is early access. It's going to take some time before they really flesh it out and before we get the full game. But I really do believe that this has a lot of potential. Again, like part of the reason I wanted to do this video is because I would like to see this game get finished. I'd like to see it be successful. And part of that is because I really am digging what they've put together so far. I also like that as you go through these levels, you'll see like salesmen selling the newest automatons that they have, of course, all steam powered. And if you're playing as somebody that's like a magic user, they'll have different reactions to these things and to you based on that background. And even in the opening sequences of the game, people will treat you differently based on whether you're a magic user or more of a technologist. And it's a really cool dichotomy to put forward, at least in my mind, narratively, to explore like a society that really prizes and cherishes technology, as you can see, and progress in that way, but then also is implementing and using magic at times as well. It's a really cool thing to explore. And I'm digging it, honestly. I'm really liking it. Now, a little more detail on the story. Basically, the player character is tasked with saving their family and village from the terrible affliction known as the Iron Plague. This mysterious malady started spreading quite inexplicably not too long ago. Scientists believe in this world that it was the result of a clash between magic and technology manifesting directly inside living sentient beings. It causes one's skin and internal organs to sprout terrifying growths made of iron. And once somebody is infected, they have to simply wait for what will inevitably come, which is that the Iron Plague is universally fatal for everybody it infects. Nobody is immune, nobody has found a cure, and no one even knows clearly how or why it spreads. And one of the main themes of the game is the inequality between the different classes, the difference between those who are poor and infected with the Iron Plague and those who are wealthy technologists at the top of society, because the only known remedy that can at least slow down the progression of the disease is the extremely expensive magical substance dragon blood. And so somewhat ironically, the only people that can slow the progression of the plague are the wealthy technologists that must rely on a magically infused substance resistance to save them, at least for a little while. And this contrast and conflict is at the core of New Arcane. This plague is the great equalizer and treats everyone the same. However, based on your position within society, you may be able to survive it for a little bit longer. And as I'm sure you can imagine, that creates some stresses between the classes. This is something the player will be interacting with constantly as they explore the world, and they try to find some cure to save countless lives. And who knows, maybe even the player character will get infected at some point during the game. And this is what's really interesting, is this exploration of the topic of how societies interact with each other when they're built on two totally opposing forces, magic and technology. And that really is at the core of the game. It's about how these companies and groups of people that rely on technology for wealth and success, how those people interact with magic in that world, those who practice it, and how do they deal with a devastating plague that's working its way through the land. Like I also said, this is coming from a small indie studio out of Ukraine. This is a passion project they've been working on for a long time, and it is out in early access now. So if you want to get in and provide feedback at this point, you can play roughly the first 10 or so hours of the game as it is right now, and they continually will be updating it as 2025 goes on with new companions, new quests, and of course, eventually, ultimately, the full game in its entirety. But I actually really like the idea of early access for RPGs because, as we saw with Baldur's Gate 3, it gives the devs a chance to fine-tune the game based on what you specifically, the audience, want. Because transparently, like, some things that players may want, the devs may not realize, or it might not be intuitive that, oh, this one thing you did, maybe even something as simple as a button placement where it's like, oh, text auto scrolls through when you have dialogue, but I keep accidentally pressing the continue button and that skipped a line of dialogue. So you guys should adjust that, get rid of that button or move that button somewhere else. Something as simple as that can have a huge impact on the overall performance of a game and the quality of the final package. And I think it's really, really crucial that they get that feedback before the game launches instead of launching it and hoping that people stick around while they make adjustments based on people's feedback. That doesn't look great. Lots of blood on the ground. I'm going to go over here. The only big note I would give them right now as they continue to progress and develop the game further is that I think loot is a little too easy to get, especially if you hold down left alt in a lot of these CRPGs. It will highlight interactable objects. This is true of Baldur's Gate and this game. And if you do that, you can see like there's loot canisters or boxes all over the place. And so in the tutorial alone, there are multiple times where they tell you like, oh, you need $200 in order to get past this gate or to pay off this guy. And I haven't had to really stop to search for money or to do anything for money yet, because if you just open up all the crates that are sprinkled everywhere, you can actually have a pretty easy time collecting those materials that you may need. So I think as they continue to develop the game, they will tone that down. And in these later sections, it definitely gets much harder to find the nitty gritty good stuff. They definitely start you out strong, but that is one note that I would give them. But I mean, just look at this, the ships in the background, just in terms of art style and presentation, I'm eating it up. I'm gonna be real. And this is one of those things you'd hope to see in an RPG or in a game where you're going to be exploring and doing a lot of stuff that requires immersion. You want to have a world that is interesting enough that you can just walk around and take it in. That for me is always a good gut check for an RPG, is if I'm going through levels and I'm just taking moments to look around and take it in, that's a good sign. That's what you want. I mean, famous RPGs, whether it's Fallout New Vegas or even like back in the day with games like Skyrim or The Witcher 3, there's entire gameplay sessions where I would basically just wander around looking at stuff. And this already is doing that for me. The other thing it's doing is struggling to maintain 60 frames. That is one thing it's struggling with, but that is also an artifact of early access and is important to also understand. If you're considering supporting them through early access, just know early access performance is not always the best. So you should be ready for some growing pains when it comes to that. I don't want to sugarcoat it. Like, games don't tend to run that well in early access, and this one probably is no different as the development progresses, but that's part of the reason that they call it early access and not final access, right? That's one of the reasons, one of the many. But again, if you're interested in checking out new Arcane, check it out at the links in the description box below. Again, it's available on Steam Early Access. It's a small team. They're just looking to get the word out there for their game. So if you're interested in CRPGs, please consider checking it out, wishlisting it, whatever else, so you can keep in touch with them as they continue developing. I know I'm going to be keeping an eye on it. I am, of course, playing it actively right now, and I'm sure I'm going to hit the 10-hour mark and hit a wall pretty soon, and then I'm going to have to wait till more content drops. But I am happy to give them feedback where I can, and I encourage you to do so as well if you want to support a small studio like this that's trying to break in with a big RPG like this. Again, shout out to the devs for hooking us up with the early access and sponsoring this video to make it happen. Much love to all of you guys for watching. Again, links below. And if you want to see me do this kind of exploration of other games in the future that maybe wouldn't get a lot of attention otherwise, let me know down in the comments. But with that, thank you for watching. I love you all desperately. I'm going to get back to exploring, and I will see you guys soon. Much love. Hugs and kisses.